Good morning. And Happy New Year. I'd like to welcome you to our work session at our call meeting this morning. And I would ask if you have cell phones to please silence them or cut them off at this time. We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Reed and prayer by Councilmember Mallon.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of serving our community.
Yes.
Grant us wisdom to make decisions that are fair and forward-looking,
Yes.
courage to do what is right, and humility to listen with open hearts. May our words be respectful, our actions just, and our work bring lasting good to those we represent. Amen.
Amen.
If you have a chance to read the minutes that City Clerk sent us this week, then if we get a motion and a second to put them on our consent agenda for Monday evening.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, if none, vote unanimous. Thank you so much. Topics for discussion at this time. We'll turn it over to our city manager, John Clown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the council. I have 4 or 5 items today. The first one is a pretty straightforward one. Our police department has routinely tried to get rid of surplus equipment that is no longer needed, cluttering up their closets over there at the police department. And one of those are some used tasers, and they aren't used anymore by the department. Some of them are functional, but they're not to a point where they use them anymore. So the chief just would like to surplus them, so he has a request to you to put on the consent agenda for Monday night so that he can get rid of those used tasers. And we'll get the highest price possible, put them on the market and see what we can get.
Okay. So, Dr. Council, have any objection to putting those on our consent agenda for Monday to get rid of those tasers from the police department? I get a motion. I mean, not a motion, but just nod of heads. Good. Thank you so much.
The second issue deals with a request from some wonderful citizens that are working on the America 250th anniversary coming up in July. And the DAR and others are asking for a meeting, not a meeting, but an opportunity to do some media and picture taking and what have you on, I think it's January 12th. Is that right? Yeah, January 12th. Is that necessarily a bad day? Sarah Weibel is trying to coordinate. Yeah, on January 12th, they're trying to there's also another option, January 22nd or whatever. But can we work through Deborah to try to figure out what the most logical date is? They want to do some picture taking and that type of thing promotionally for this wonderful event. So.
What pictures are you speaking?
They would like pictures of the council and staff and members of these wonderful organizations that are going to be promoting the 250th.
We do have the council meeting at 5:30 on the 12th.
That's what I was thinking.
Seems like an opportune time to combine that with photographs.
Well, let me see if I can impose on Sarah to reach out to see if that'll work. That might be a wonderful opportunity, maybe half an hour before the meeting or so.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great. That might work. Well, why don't we try to do that? I have 3 or 4 other items, but the next item is a citizen reached out to me, I'm going to say a couple months ago now, and I've had 2 or 3 conversations that I know Councilor Blanton did, and I was sympathetic with his message, and he wanted an opportunity to just speak to the council. It deals with the rate increases that occurred last year, and I was struck that by 2 things. First of all, he raised a fundamental fairness issue, which really struck me. as having merit. And I promised him that we would bring that to the retreat, which we did. And it's not a change of the rates, but it's a change in how we calculate the rates. And after informally talking to council members, we have implemented that, and that's going into effect, so that if you're using 0 to 4,000 gallons presently, you're charged one rate. But if you use more, especially if you have a larger family, whatever the case may be, I mean, some people use water for watering their lawn or whatever, and some people just have large families that need more water than maybe a senior couple or something. But the way the system had worked is that if you use more than 4,000 gallons, you would be charged a higher rate for the entire amount. And Mr. Morris pointed out to us that fundamentally is unfair to larger families or whatever, and we brought that to the council's attention, and we've adjusted that so that you'll only be charged the additional amount for the additional amount over 4,000. So everyone's charged the same rate from 0 to 4,000. So we thank Mr. Morris for bringing that to our attention, and we think it's a fairer system. But he would like to talk about the rates and how he's impacted as a citizen. So Mr. Morris, can you join us?
Sure.
And thank you very much for coming today.
I want to thank you for having me. I'm Roy Morris. I live on Foster Street. I was born and raised here. I just want to say I appreciate Mr. Clem talking to me about this situation. Mr. Blanton has been very helpful too. I was thinking on the way over here, typically I wouldn't be thinking about, percentages and millions of dollars and projections, and how much it costs. There's so many things going on. My hat's off to you all for the work you do. It's incredibly complex. Your documentation is very impressive, and your planning, and so, hey, I'm thankful to you for what you do for our community. But like I say, I wouldn't be thinking about that except for this meeting. What I would be thinking about is that City of Madison bill sitting on my desk at home. And I think that, it's easy to forget that the taxpayers, the voters, the public, that's what they see every day, that bill. And so I just had a few questions I wanted to raise if I could. It says here, and I wrote down my notes, but that our bill, my family's bill went up $100 a month overnight, okay? That's just for water and sewer. And I talked to Mr. Clem, and he said we have a critical need for infrastructure upgrades, and I understand that. The question I have is, did anybody work that backwards and consider the dollars and cents cost to families? Because for us, it's about that $100 that has to come from somewhere else in our budget. I think the tiered fee system is a problem. And thank you for making those initial changes that you were able to make. But personally, I don't see how anything but a flat rate makes sense. Larger families, like I have 8 people in my house and 2 incomes. But across the street, they have 2 people and 2 incomes. And yet I pay a higher rate for water, not just more. I don't mind paying more for more water. But like I said, my usage has been relatively level, except for 1 month when I tried to water a garden. That was a disaster. Our gardens aren't very good. But we gave up on watering the garden because of this and because the garden wasn't very good. But we can't afford to water the garden, and we don't water our grass. We just wash dishes, wash clothes, and take baths. And so the only way we can avoid that next year is to stop taking baths that last week of the month. I don't think anybody's going to do that. I don't think that's, doable. So what Mr. Clemens said, that's a method that's used in many cities to encourage conservation. I hope I quoted you correctly.
Yep.
Okay. But after speaking to Mr. Blanton, we don't have a water shortage. So my thinking is, if we don't have a water shortage, why are we rationing water? Because that's what it feels like to me. next question is, can the city make some cuts? If it's an emergency, shouldn't the city be willing to meet us halfway? So, all I'm asking is that you change the water and sewer rate to a flat rate that does not punish large families. Also, I want to request that the city find half the funding necessary. I think that was $250,000 or so you wanted to go up in the budget for water and sewer. I'd like to see the city meet us halfway. So these things make us, the taxpayers, the bill payers, think, you know, it's a little bit shocking because that, you know, I think inflation's about 4% right now. And yet, the budget called for a 17% increase. That's what makes people like me start looking at the budget. We want to know, why is my bill $100 more this month? So I think the budget said 17%, about somewhere in there. But that translated to 70% on my bill. That doesn't sound equitable to me. And then other questions, the more I dug into the budget, I had more questions that left me scratching my head, like why does it cost $52,000 a year to flush the fire hydrants? Why is it $350,000 a year to maintain storm drains? Why are we spending $4.3 million for 2,200 natural gas customers and 5.3 for the whole town, 5,308 customers, which is about half per customer, 2,000 for natural gas and 1,000 per customer for water and sewer. We all need water and sewer. Why is there a $4,000 increase in the general fund? Shouldn't you be freezing some of those departments? Just stop adding in an emergency? Maybe these are crazy questions. Like I said, I don't begin to understand a budget the way you all do because you are immersed in it. But there are questions that come up when we see a sharp increase in a bill. And then, and this is kind of the same subject, but kind of different. Then I found out, you know, I need to do some work at the house there because I have some dead trees that are about to fall on my barn. And I found out I have to pay $50 to get permission to cut down a tree. It doesn't say on the website, but if you dig into City Code 86-8-B2, it says that dead and dying trees are exempt from this. It should say that on the website when I went to fill out the permit. I don't need an expert to tell me that the tree's dead, okay? And it's honestly, it's not gonna matter. I have to cut it down. Even if you don't approve me cutting that tree down, it's coming down either on my barn or somewhere else, you know? So, I don't think that rule can be equitably enforced. Unless you wanna hire more people in enforcement to follow the sound of chainsaws over, you know, who's cutting down a tree, and then go out and measure that. Do we really want to, is that where we want to go? I think that creates an adversarial relationship with the taxpayers. And so, and I don't think that's a good PR look either. To fairly and equitably enforce that rule, you would have to hire more people and pay more money for bureaucracy and increase the budget. In my humble opinion, I think, as it says in the city code, dead and dying trees should be exempt from the process. And it needs to be clear on the webpage, and they should also be exempt from the $50 fee, because that feels like just more government overreach, desire for more money from the taxpayers, and it's not, I don't think it's in the end the right message you want to send. And I'm almost done. I appreciate y'all. In general, I'd like to see those tree regulations limited to the historic district and downtown. That's the face of Madison. Many of us out further have wooded lots. The trees are falling all the time, limbs are always falling, they have bugs in them. I would like to see that. We also like lawns, you know, and it's hard to grow. If you have 25 trees per acre, as your guidelines, UGA guidelines are saying, sometimes that makes it difficult. So every home is different, but I feel like that's more a historic district issue. And lastly, if you look on page 27 of your budget, there's been a dramatic drop in home ownership in Madison compared to county, state, and nation. Why is that? Well, in my opinion, it's because you can't afford to own a home in Madison. So if you approve more fees and higher taxes, you're not helping. I would love it if the city's budgetary priorities match that of the public. I know it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. So, that's really all I have to say. I appreciate it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If you'll just think about those things, I'd really appreciate it. And thank you again. I will say one last thing. I'm looking forward to hearing how the debate goes and how much it's going to affect my taxes when you build a new roundabout. I've been looking for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks for your comments, Mr. Morris. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the issues about transforming to a flat rate, or making any change to the way in which we charge or what we charge, I would remind Mr. Morris that the best time to bring that up is during the budget. So I'll make sure, I have his contact information, I'll make sure that I invite him so that when we're going to talk about rates, or we're going to talk about how we charge those rates, that would be the time to address the rate issue. In terms of the trees, I could either ask planning to reach out to them, or if there's a council member that I mean, he's bringing up, one thing that struck me about Mr. Morris, and I've had, I think, 3 conversations with him, is he's a good guy, and his comments are based in common sense, and he's a gentleman. And I think all of our residents deserve responses or whatever, so I have tried to keep in communication with him. His budgetary comments are more timely than I think he even knows, as we'll find out in the next month, because we've got to address some real financial challenges that we face. And so I will keep in communication with him, and if any council member wants to deal with the tree issue, that's fine, or if you'd like me to direct planning to, because he had some questions about the way we charge or why we charge certain things for trees. As we begin a new year, I just want to take a second as city manager to thank and to welcome the 62 new businesses that started in Madison, that opened up in Madison in this past calendar year. We certainly wish them well, and I'm not sure that any of us were really familiar with what that number was, but it's 62. We had 62 new business startups this past year. I see a couple of county officials here. It's becoming timely to bring back that FLOST issue, which was postponed. And I think we'll be working with the county on that whole issue very soon. I think there's a requirement, if I'm not mistaken, there's a requirement that you make a decision, I think in the month of January, which might require a special meeting or whatever, but we need to, it's been some time since we've talked about that, so we probably need a primer for council members to remember what it is and what our options are and that type of thing. But I just bring it up because it's timely, and we've got to make a decision on that soon. I also wanted to, and Mr. Morris mentioned this, interestingly, but we have been recently contacted by our school department as they move forward to build a new school, which is a wonderful thing for our community, a wonderful thing for the county. But there is a request for $1 million of funding. And that's problematic for everyone. It's problematic for the county, it's problematic for the school itself, and they're willing to shoulder, I think, 50% of the total cost. But for a little town like a little city like Madison, you know, coming up with $1 million is a real challenge. You know, we don't have $1 million sitting in the bank account that we can just write a check for or whatever. And the school's contention is that there's a legal requirement for us to do so. It's problematic because I had several meetings with the former superintendent, and they were looking for the city's support for annexation and the city's support for sewer. Because they're such an essential ingredient in our community, I was very supportive of that. It hasn't come before you yet, and so you need to vote on annexation and vote on providing sewer. But there was never any conversation about the road and $1 million. And so it's problematic, so I just want you to know that we're evaluating the request. We're looking at it from a financial standpoint. We're looking at it from a legal standpoint. We'll have a lot of conversation about that request. It has not. The roundabout that's being proposed is a good solution to an existing problem, as our city engineer said. But for the schools being there, though, there would be no need for that, and we wouldn't be discussing that. So it's solely because that's where the schools are located that we need to deal with that. But I think that Madison just needs a bit of understanding from all parties that we don't have $1 million just sitting around, as Mr. Morris just articulated. And we have a 5-year and a 10-year roads plan, and all of you know that we don't spend enough on roads, and when we do, we're dealing with the worst of the worst. And if we were luckier, we'd have more money to deal with a real need. But that roundabout, that road improvement, isn't even on our plan. We didn't even know about it 2 months ago. And so all we're asking for is some community understanding that we need to work our way through this, and that if there was anybody thinking that we have millions of dollars sitting in a bank account that we could just willy-nilly write a check, unfortunately for me, that's not the case. And so we'll approach this in a reasonable way and get back to them in a timely fashion. But I wanted to make sure the council was aware of all of that. And the last thing I just want to say is there's going to be a lot of talk, as you know, because we discussed it. I do want to mention that we still have to deal with the second half of the retreat, which we haven't done yet. We had a very successful initial retreat, but the second part of it needs to be addressed. And we're trying to work a date that makes sense for everyone. And we thought we might use 30 January because we had a meeting set that day anyways, but that's not going to work for our speakers. So my question now is, and you can get back to Deborah, is the next date that's been thrown out is 13 February. It's a Friday. So the question is whether you can devote a morning on 13 February. And we'll work through this and try to get a date that works for everyone. And I want to thank the council for a very productive retreat where we dealt with a lot of important issues. And in terms of the biggest challenge we face is what's been discussed over the last half hour, which is the finances. I just wanted to make sure that people remember that this council did cut the budget 2 years ago. You cut $800,000 out of the budget because of a financial challenge we face. You froze positions. You eliminated positions. You voted to regionalize and work with the county on providing services. You privatized some services. And so unfortunately for us, cutting is not new, but we've reached a point where we need to address the second round because more needs to be addressed. And before we even bring up the issue of new taxes or whatever, Mr. Morris is right. We have a responsibility to tighten our belt. You know it. You've already done it. and if we have to do it again, we'll do it again. But we have to live within our means, just like the people at home do, and just like our citizens do. But at some point, tough decisions have to be made, and you recently received an infrastructure report card that points to some real needs that can't continue to be deferred. So I think that in 2026, our big issue is going to be reconciling a financial challenge that we need to do it. And it needs to be a disciplined approach. It needs to be an approach that brings us back to basics in terms of what the needs are, not the wants. It's going to be difficult, but we got through it 2 years ago, and we'll get through it again. And I think that that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much
Yep.
for the report. This time we have fire truck at surplus, Mr. Pennington, Mr. Mason. Ms. Mason.
Fire truck, correct?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, this is Lorinda Mason, who is our new purchasing director. She's done a terrific job, brings a breadth of experience that is badly needed these days. So we want to welcome Lorinda.
Good morning.
Yeah, and I'll start. Do I need the mic?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Pull that
please.
mic.
And then I can step back and let Gene take over. I wish Mr. Morris had stayed here, because, I mean, he's dug into the budget, and I know that that's something we're all very conscious of. I know from the fire department side that we're always looking at that. Unfortunately, we still do have some older equipment that we've been trying to cycle out. So this first topic today is with regards to fixing our engine 22. We had a problem, and it's been an ongoing problem, but it got to the point that we had to fix it. So we sent it in for repairs, and unfortunately, the repairs came back close to $40,000 to get this thing properly fixed. Well, we didn't have that $40,000 figured into the budget this year. So being cost conscious and also analyzing how we can generate this without making our problem become more of y'all's problem, we went in and figured that we did have a reserve engine that we could surplus. We could use the funds from that surplus engine to cover the cost of repairs to get our true engine 22 back in, not only in service, but done right. And so Gene can hit on these repairs, but we figured out a way to, we don't know if it'll cover the entire cost, but cover a majority of the cost to get an engine back in service here in Madison that we desperately need back in service.
Yeah, having said that, what we're looking to do is we have two older engines still in the fleet. You've been gracious enough to supply us a new engine in 2022, new ladder truck in 24, and we just ordered a new engine to replace our frontline engine out of our second station in last year, October of last year. We expect delivery of that truck sometime around October, November-ish of this year, current year. And having said that, we look at our fleet, and there's no need to maintain all that apparatus. We do need to keep a reserve apparatus because trucks do go out for oil changes, spares, or whatever stuff happens. So we need to have an engine to be able to step up. We had to evaluate which one of the two engines that we currently have is the best to use. We decided that best engine was the one that is now being repaired now. One of the simple facts is the other engine that we're looking to ask you to surplus so we can sell that for those funds is a longer truck, wider turning radius. It doesn't get down a majority, well, I won't say a majority, it gets down a majority of the streets, but not all of the streets. The other truck is much more maneuverable and gets down most, if not all, of the streets that we needed to get down. So that in and of itself led us to want to say, to put money into that truck, to keep that truck as a reserve apparatus. So basically what we're here today is to try to ask to put this truck, the engine that I think you've got on your list there is a 1999 KME. That truck was purchased new by the city of Madison, and actually I came to work for the city in January of 1999. We ordered that truck in February of 1999 and took delivery of it in August of 99. We paid $154,000 for that truck at the time. And so we're asking to do that as a 1999 KME International 4900 chassis. We would like to put that out. We typically put it on Gov Deals. I've been asked, what can we expect to get out of it from the city manager many times, and you guys know as well as I do, if you put the right two people in the room, that truck could go for whatever. If those right two people aren't in that room, that truck could go for a little. So we're wanting to put it out there. We are gonna set a reserve on it, and we will have right of refusal on anything less than that. So we're not gonna just give the truck away by any stretch of the imagination. But we do hope to offset the cost for the repairs of this. Like I said, we try to find any way we can to creatively come up with money to cover these costs that we have to come to you and ask for. And we want you to assure you this is one way we think is the best option for the city to do, and get that truck out of fleet. And we also reduce our maintenance costs from keeping that truck up too, so. Any other questions?
Yeah, so, Gene, so if I gather this right, we're gonna have one less firefighting vehicle. You guys call them engines, us laymen call them trucks. You're gonna have one less vehicle for fighting fires. Does that leave us in a vulnerable position? Does it lead you guys to come back in another
No, sir.
couple of months and need another engine?
No, sir, because we're getting a new engine in, which is a surplus, which leaves us with one surplus engine out there. So yes, no, sir, we would not be in the shorts of any way on that.
And to elaborate on that, so the new engine that should come in at the end of the year will take the place of what is currently our engine 22. So we have an engine 22 and a reserve 22. And so we're looking to surplus the reserve 22, which means we won't have a reserve engine for the next few months. We're not concerned. We've ran that through the officers, through the department. Everybody agrees that this is the right move. And then once the new engine 22 comes in, the new Pierce, then the one that we're fixing will turn into our reserve apparatus.
So having a reserve is important to fill in if a vehicle needs to be repaired for 3 months, whatever. Is that
That's
you don't
right.
normally use the reserve except for those situations?
That's correct. Like currently, the reserve would be used until that other engine gets repaired.
Okay, so you're asking the city to put this surplus fire truck for you guys to sell, for the fire department to
Yes,
sell. So,
Similar to the police department's tasers.
Okay.
Exactly like the police one, just surplus that out so we can.
so if we could get a nod from my council member to put this on our consent agenda for. our
Just
meeting
one more
on Monday.
question. You mentioned setting a reserve for gov deals. Can you tell us what reserve you intend to put on it? In other words, I believe we need $40,000 to repair the other engine 22,
We're looking at putting a reserve of 30,000 on it.
30?
We have watched Gov Deals with other trucks very similar to what we are proposing to put on there, and they have gone anywhere from the low 20 range up to about $45,000. So we think 30 is a good comparable in the middle range, and again, with that reserve set at 30, it doesn't mean that if that truck doesn't meet that 30 that we still can't sell it. If someone bids 28 under Gov Deals policies, we'll have right of refusal on that $28,000 bid. In other words, we could drop our reserve and take that 28,000 if we so wanted to.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for that report. Sure. All right, Madison Fire Station 22 Architect, Contract Award, Mr. Pennington, Ms. Mason.
You want to work with the PowerPoint?
Yes, so hopefully this PowerPoint works. I'm gonna go ahead and try to go to the first slide. And so we're recommending awarding the contract to an architect for the new fire station. And we're asking for this to be added to the consent agenda. And so the selection process for this, we used an RFQ. For anybody who's not familiar with that is, it's a qualifications-based selection. So we're asking architects to come to us with their qualifications, not their price as the most important thing, but are they the most qualified? So as a committee, we all looked at their experience, the team that would be involved, what approach they would take to the project, and as well as their past performance. So those were the most important factors to us in this. After that was decided, we did look at the fee proposal, and so that was submitted separately. Did you want to comment on that before I go to the next one?
Once you work through,
Okay. So a few highlights about the architect that we decided was the most qualified. Their name is 2WR, and they are based out of Columbus, Georgia. They've been in business for 24 years. We did ask that they submitted similar projects only in the last 7 years. They had an extensive list outside of that, but we did ask for it to be limited to 7 years. And so they included 5 projects. They were only required to include 3, but they included 5 projects that we were very impressed with. They provided 5 references, and we were able to contact a few of those references, and they had great things to say about them. They were never involved in litigation, and for their proposed timeline, it was exactly what we were looking for, which is 6 months or less to CD, or construction documents. So we selected them, again, because they had a good timeline, they had a good approach, they went into detail about this, and we were very impressed with that. Their previous experience was aligned with our vision. Their team was extremely experienced. They provided details about their team as well as what each architect or project manager had dealt with in the past as far as specifically fire stations, and they have done a lot with fire stations. And the evaluation committee also really liked one specific design that they showed us, which, as we'll talk about a little bit later, can really simplify this process as well as save money. The other considerations were that they did mention an efficient, cost-driven approach. They can reuse project plans from the past, which will help save money. And as we later saw in their fee, this will actually be a 4% instead of, we'll go into this a little bit more, but instead of a higher percent, if you were to do new plans completely from scratch, that would cost more. So as far as the budget goes, they estimate that this entire project is probably going to fall somewhere in the 4.3 million. So as a breakdown in their proposal, what they said that was going to include is that they estimate construction to be 4.1 million. Their fee is 4% because we're reusing a plan if this goes through. And so that totals just under 4.3. And so the question is, do we have that in the budget? And right now it is in the budget because of, if we break it down, we have just under 4.5, which is gonna come from 4.2 being in SPLOST, and 250 would be from the proceeds of the sale of, I don't wanna make this right, the ladder truck. Thank you. And so that's, our recommendation is to go forward with 2WR. And so Brooks can speak more about their experience.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to thank the committee. We have an awesome group of people here in Madison that have spent a lot of time working on this RFQ process. We took time during the holidays. People had moved some plans around to make sure we were there. Specifically want to thank Lorinda, Karen, Sean, John, and then our fire department members for spending the time, because we're ready to rock and roll. This isn't something that just popped up. This is something that we've been working on for many years. I look back at my notes, and I think original notes showed we started talking about this in 2021, and then in 2023 kind of got a green light, and so we're ready to see this see groundbreaking on this project. Lastly, I want to thank all of y'all, Mayor, Council, for listening and supporting us so far throughout this journey. We're excited to build something that will enable us to best serve this city for many, many, many years to come. With that, we can talk more about it. I imagine we're going to have some questions. I do have a few notes that if you don't ask, then I might hit on at the end, so I'm going to open it up for questions.
So, I appreciate you and the committee working this out for us. So, if the council approved this on Monday night, when you guys plan to get started on the building?
That is a really good question. So I think you're asking with regards to just the general timeline here.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to speak on my experience in the private sector, and things are different. I've learned through the RFQ process and dealing with municipalities. But I would imagine that if we engage them, if you sign it on Monday, Then we're going to be a few months, probably maybe 2 to 3 months to get all of our final construction documents, which would be architectural and civil documents together. At that point, we would have everything we would need to put together an RFP. And that RFP process, in a perfect world, we start it maybe March.
Yeah, we start before it's actually put out their side.
Okay. All right, so if it starts in March, then I guess simultaneously we will submit that for permitting, try to get the NOI process started. And once we choose that GC through the RFP process, ideally we're groundbreaking potentially midsummer.
And Mr. Torrance, city manager, you being one of the committee members, how do you feel? Are you,
I think the committee is doing a terrific job, and I've done a lot of these in other cities or whatever, and I'm very proud of the work that they, I didn't realize, Chief, you brought an expert witness in behind you. But I'm very pleased so far.
okay.
And I know I have to be asking like 2 or 3 times a week to Gene and the chief, of like, when's the ribbon cutting? I've been pushing them.
Are there any comments from council members?
I do, Mayor, if I could, I have I guess a process question for Linda. So I'm familiar with the RFP concept. You put out information, you let vendors bid on it. The RFQ, I'm a little confused here. So did this precede the RFP that'll come later? But yet we've limited to this one company?
So the way the RFQ works is instead of asking for a proposal and then having a breakdown of, when you evaluate someone, you have to say, this is how we're gonna evaluate you, and you give percentages and points to each thing that they submit. And in an RFP, you will weigh the cost. You'll say, part of what you're submitting is, how much is this gonna cost? And I'm going to choose based on that. And that's usually one of the heaviest factors. In an RFQ, which is usually used for something like architects, you're looking at qualifications only. You're not looking at the price when you're considering which firm to use. You're looking at who meets your qualifications. And the qualifications, as listed in the RFQ, will say exactly what we need. Did they have the right amount of references? Did they have a good financial history? So we looked at all of those things to decide who meets our needs the best, instead of looking at the cost as one of the most important factors.
So if we've selected TWR as the winner of the RFQ, if you will, and we've selected them, they'll be the only people responding to the RFP.
They wouldn't be part of the RFP. The RFP would be for the general, yeah, I was gonna say the general contractor. I drew a blank for a second.
I think to clarify, I think the RFQ
For the architect.
specifically addresses the architect
Yes.
and the plans.
Yes.
So we saw the
Oh, the RFP is for the
164,000 or
actual
whatever.
construction.
Yes.
That's the cost for
Mhm.
that element. And I assume when we go for the RFP, we will present what the plans are, more or less, and let whoever wants to apply for
Mhm.
the RFP will already have in their hands what the plans look like from our
RFQ.
architects.
Thank you for
exactly.
that clarification.
Yes.
Was TWR the only architectural firm that responded, or were there other
Oh,
ones?
no, yes, there were several others, and they all, I mean, we had a lot of very good submissions. There were several that ranked really high. It's just what we were looking for, especially the specific fire station that they showed us, showed that they can do exactly what we're wanting. So there was several people who replied, and submitted, and they did a great job. They just weren't the most
Okay.
qualified.
And the 4.3 million that this company has projected
Mhm.
is strictly their guess, it has nothing to do with the real world that'll
It's-
come with the RFPs.
Yeah, the way that they looked at this is they've already built this before. And so with a few modifications, they can say, based on, this was a few years ago that they built it, so of course they have to calculate the inflation. So things are gonna cost more than they did when they built it. But we told them what modifications we may, want. So based on already building it previously, they're able to get a pretty good estimate for us.
Okay.
And it was in line with our budget.
Then I have just one final quick question for Brooks.
May I elaborate on that one too?
Sure.
So she mentioned that they had built a station, and that was in their packet. And so when we were making our decision, before we actually made our final decision on this group, two of our officers, Daniel and Gene, actually rode all the way and to this fire station that they had designed,
Nice.
so that we could check it out, so
Nice.
that we could see if it would fit our needs and what modifications we could potentially make to it. Because we also had a pretty good idea that if we chose that, it would reduce potential costs. And which is why I think we're at a 4% fee here, versus market maybe 6 to 10%. And so if we could find something that was previously already designed, it not only would save costs for us, but we would have a very good idea going into it, potentially what those costs could be. So that is why, one of the main reasons we chose this particular architect.
Can I follow up? Another thing that was really nice about this process is when we asked for their experience, they included pictures, but they also included the year it was built as well as the budget. And we asked them to include what was the estimated budget as well as what did it actually end up costing. So that we could also see, were there a lot of change orders, or was the estimate way lower than what it ended up actually costing, so we know what to expect as well. So we were able to see what it typically was costing to build these. And this specific example was on the lower end of what the stations cost to build. So this was definitely more affordable than those.
Thank you. And the last quick question I had for Brooks, so are you relatively confident, Brooks, that this design for the new station will allow our ladder truck to completely fit within the confines of the building?
Yes, sir. Our
Oh,
ladder
good.
truck will fit.
I'm glad to hear that. Good,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Well, so long as the ladder is down.
Oh.
Right. Definitely.
Had to bring that up.
Definitely.
Had to go there.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I really think we could actually clear it with the deck down this time too, though. Contingency built in.
Well, Mr. Peters, thank you so much. And how
Yes.
long has this been in the planning process to get to this point now?
I mean, if you look back to when we first started talking about it, trying to figure out funding, because we didn't want to put the burden just on the citizens that live here. We wanted to go through SPLOST and anyone that comes through this community, because we do serve people that come through and pass through. So we started looking at SPLOST, I don't know, John, a few years ago. So this has been 5 to 6 years in the making, and we're very excited about it.
I am too.
We're pleased to get to this point, so I think I have the nod of our council to put this on our call meeting after this work session to get that approved. And you'll be well on your way, and thank you so much. for
Yes, sir.
sitting
Thank
this
y'all.
through.
Thank you.
Good job.
The advisability of video recording for public access to meetings of city commissions with Judicial Authority, HPC, Corridor, P and Z, and DDA. The council. John, you have any comments on this?
I think this came from a council member. I do have an opinion about it, but
Okay,
I,
council
Where'd it
member,
come
but
Yeah, I asked this be put on as a discussion item, and it was brought to me by one of my constituents who tried to look at what used to be available online video broadcasting. And it kind of goes back to, I guess, to COVID, when we couldn't hold in-person meetings. We started doing all our meetings, including our council meetings, remotely. We have the equipment kind of in place to do that. And over time, we've slowly dropped that, so now it's only the mayor and council meetings that are broadcasted virtually. I believe this is live streamed and archived for future access, our council meetings, but we don't do any of the other ones. And I was thinking, certainly for the commissions that have, I guess, legislative authority, HPC, planning and zoning, DDA, corridor, that is probably something that we should consider doing. I'm convinced that with the technology of today, we don't really need a staff person running our camera. I noticed, for example, today, we don't have Ken Coker running back there, so there's got to be a way to actually make it very simple for commissions to flip switches, do very quick keystrokes, whatever, to at least archive them to be available later. Maybe, I don't know the technology, whether it's possible to do live streaming and archive them for later access, but it seems to me in this day and age, it's a fairly simple thing to do, and I think it really would go a long ways to improving our communication with our citizens and their ability to, transparency and all those good things. And I know I've discussed this with our city manager, and he's got more experience with other cities than I do, and it's a fairly common way of doing things. So, did you have some comments, John?
I really don't, and this more is a philosophical question for the council, and that is whether or not you think that transparency is an issue, or whether you believe the citizens should have the opportunity to review it. I was mentioning to several other councilors this week that I had this debate 30 years ago, before there was the internet. The issue was producing it for TV. But I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, cities were talking about this, so it's not new, and it's really where the council is philosophically, whether they want to have this option available for citizens or not. I mean, if you do, we'll figure it out. And if it's a staff issue, then we need to evaluate the equipment. I was in one city that had a city clerk's desk and a toggle switch, and we didn't have staff for committees. The committee chair, before they started the meeting, would come over and flip the toggle switch. That's all it took. And the meeting would go on, and there'd be voice-activated mics, and that's how it was done. And so it clearly can be done. You did it during COVID. So the question is whether you want your committees televised or not. That's what it is.
And I think our city won't always be transparent,
Yeah.
to our citizens.
I agree.
Can we give John, to look into this, John, to come back with some answers for us?
And I
don't
might
think
add,
that-
Mayor, I had a conversation with the council member, Malinowski, who has connections to the high school, of course. And there's groups over there, there's classes that have some expertise that I don't in cameras and toggle switches and screens and all that, where there should be a really good opportunity, I think, at probably a low cost or no cost,
Right.
to get some advice on how to set up the mechanics of that. And I thought that was a great suggestion that maybe John could incorporate into potential plan options.
So maybe when John comes back to us, he can look into all of this for us, and we'll be good to go. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
I feel like you kind of, on top of what you just said about the transparency, I mean, I do feel like, I think this is more of a question of improved accessibility for our community.
Yes.
I don't think it's a question of transparency, because we sit right here, we have open meetings, we produce the minutes. So I just want to make a minute distinction between thinking that if for some reason this doesn't happen because of staffing or whatever, I would say it would never be about transparency, but it would be about accessibility. And I do support
I agree.
improved accessibility.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point.
Mr. Mayor, I'm mindful that we're going to take a while over the next 3 or 4 items, but there's one item towards the end, which is an annual report from our good friend, Mr. Phil, and I would ask the council, I mean, especially if he has a time commitment, that we might take him out of turn so that he doesn't necessarily have to sit through the whole meeting.
That's fine.
We really appreciate his input.
Hey, we have to sit through the whole meeting.
It's stimulating. So thank you to the mayor and council for allowing me to share the annual report for Green Space. And as others, I appreciate the support that you all have provided. We like to keep you busy, as well as Monica and John, the city staff, and it looks like we'll continue to do that. I think the headline is that we've started Tree Week, which we ran last year as a pilot. And I know Eric participated in some of that. And we're going to make it even bigger this year. So we're trying to rival some of the other city events that are held that draw visitors and residents look forward to. It's obviously going to take years before it ever approaches anything such as MadFest or the any of the other events, but that's our intent. So we have, this year, we'll have a speakers night at the library. We'll have speakers who talk about forestry and tree management and conservation. We'll have, of course, Arbor Day, which is what it's built around, on Friday morning. And then after Arbor Day, we expect to have the trolley, the new trolley in town, have a tree tour. And then Saturday, we'll have a walk for folks who haven't been exposed to the trails. And then a nature walk where David Burke will talk about nature. And last year, he brought out his snakes, which some people find exciting and other people run from. If Monica's here just mentioning snakes, she would be running out the door. And then on Sunday, we'll have another trolley tour and a Bike in the Woods campaign, a Bike in the Woods event. So not just walking, but biking. Dan Zant is part of a biking group, and he produced the video that was last year's film festival for the Tree Week award winner. So they go biking all the time on the trails. We love them because they keep the trails worn down. Anyway, they'll have a new event, which is the trail ride. And then we'll have the film festival, preceded by the trolley tour guide that Ben's going to narrate for. And then we'll have the film festival, which we'll probably have here again, because it's easy and simple, and we don't have any taxpayer funding for the Tree Week, so we've been able to gather a few sponsors for this year, and we're able to use this for the film festival. We'd like to expand that and make it a big deal. Lexington, Kentucky. So I'm a University of Louisville graduate, so I don't like talking about the other city in Kentucky, especially the other academic institution that's there. But that's really what we modeled our Tree Week after. And it gets thousands of participants every week, and that's what we're hoping to do. And then, of course, as you all know, we've added 75 plus acres on the northwest quadrant of the city, and we have a vision for that to rival what we're going to have in Horse Branch Preserve, and have the preserve up there, which we're now calling 1 mile, to be the same thing, and that's just a seed in the ground right now. We were able to obtain two, I'll say, smaller grants. One is for planning in the tree canopy, as well as disaster planning. So the tree canopy is really updating our census. Technology's improved 20 years since when the tree census was done, and it really gives us some really nice maps that we'll be able to integrate into the comp plan and our updated green print. The other grant is for invasive species. So the good news is we now have, approaching 200 acres of conservation land in the city. The bad news is it's rife with invasive species. So it's a big problem. Invasive species are incredibly harmful and detrimental to the tree canopy. They take the nutrients out of the ground, and as you can see with typically it's the, I forgot the name of it, the Kudas vine that just strangles the trees, or wisteria. That's the obvious, but they're even more harmful, and they just take the nutrients and they don't allow new trees to replace the mature trees. You just end up with a forest of scrub trees that have no resilience. So we're trying to get rid of those. We got a grant for that. But I mention it and highlight it as it's a future issue for the city to address. When we put those lands into the Conservation Trust, they have to be maintained. One of the key aspects is we have to get rid of the invasive species. So this grant helps us understand the amount of effort so we can plan for future efforts, and it's labor intensive. I mean, you need some herbicide to kill what you cut and treat, but it's mainly labor intensive. So we're trying to learn that because we have to get on top of that or we'll be in non-compliance with the trust. We're starting a city square concept where the land that's around the post office, we have a vision of not making it the same, but to be the same quality as Town Park and make the city square really something that when you come into the city, it just pops and grabs at you. But today, because it's federal property and it's owned by the post office or by GAO, we can't do anything. So we would like to take over the maintenance of that, and we're currently in the process of the discussions led by Ben Perot
with the feds to get through a maintenance agreement. They're obviously going to own the land. And we've also asked that they insert language so that the city would have a right of first refusal. In another town, the post office sold the post office when they moved. So typical, they would move, the post office would relocate somewhere on Eaton Road, build a modern, little post office. Then they sell this. So somebody opens up an antique shop or opens up a restaurant, and we just lost our investment in the hardscape and the landscape that we put on the land. So we're going to ask for a right of first refusal if the feds ever try to sell the land, so they can't literally sell it out from underneath us. But that is going to be a multi-year project. It's in process. I typically don't like to put things in the annual report that haven't been completed, but we've completed, with your approval, the conversations with the feds, and it's ongoing. So we continue to get funding with the 1 Mile project. We now have, in the last 5 years, procured over $6 million in GDOT alternative transportation funding, as well as a handful of grants from DNR, such as the purchase of 1 Mile and the renovations in the Horse Branch. So we have all those resources in our portfolio, but now to improve them. In my opinion, we're just about out of grant money because we've made the large purchases and grants don't pay for maintenance. So we'll get some of the construction of the resources into Andrews Park, Horse Branch, but there's nothing currently slated for 1 Mile. The other issue that's going to have to be funded with that is maintenance. So the two objectives strategically for the Green Space Commission is people and money. That probably would fit into just about anybody's strategic plan in the world. You could just say, what do you need? People and money. So we're trying to recruit more volunteers, because for the maintenance of all of these lands, we're going to need somebody to supervise and monitor when a tree falls down or there's other safety issues. Sometimes they're small, sometimes such as trash. The other time, raccoon got into somebody's trash and carried the garbage bag down to the trail. The others, significant safety issues such as trees or rattlesnakes, where David needs to come out and relocate some because there's a nest of them right next to the trail. Volunteers can do most of that and take that load off of the city. So we'll be working, and this year we had the volunteer handbook put online, so that's a major milestone to help us recruit volunteers. But in all honesty, we're really struggling. We had to get an extension of the invasive species grant because we can't get enough volunteers to help us cut down those vines, which get us matching funds for that grant. Carl Scott is really struggling with that, and we're trying to resolve that, but that's a challenge we have. And we're going to start looking for local companies and individuals to start funding some of our projects, such as Tree Week, for sponsorships, as well as for some of these other resources. You all are familiar with the millions of dollars that were raised for Town Park. That's a totally different circumstance, but we would love to try to get people who are going to use it and people who live here to finance the resources that are going into these projects. Yeah, that's a challenge. It's as challenging for you to balance the budget as it is for a business, and for us coming up and asking for a bridge that costs $50,000 to open up Horse Branch Creek. It's a great idea, but nobody's willing to write a check for even part of that $50,000. So those are two strategic tasks that we continue to look at. It's people and money. In the report that you have a copy of are all the things that we have accomplished, and the commission continues to really run a robust agenda of activities. So now we have Tree Week with Arbor Day. We've got the Roots and Shoots program, which is new, the endowment from Chris Lambert. So we're giving away approximately 100 saplings a year now to kids. No application, no nothing. They just show up typically at the train depot. on a Saturday in late January or early February, and they're provided a tree. We have the tree grant program, Ricketts Endowment, where we've given away, it's shared with the applicant homeowner. And so we're providing and helping to provide about 6 to 8 trees a year for the last 20 years. So we've got a lot of activities that are behind the scenes that take a fair amount of effort, but the commissioners that work on there, they're just doing an incredible job, and I can't say enough about the pleasure it is to work with all of them. With that, I'll open up for any questions or comments.
Do many locals use this trail?
So that's a good question, Mr. Mayor. One of the things we want to do this coming year is install some trail cameras and put them down like at the knee level so we can count knees of humans that go by, so we have a record of it. Anecdotally, and looking at the evidence on the trail, Pritchard Loop is used the most. It's got the heaviest usage based on what we see when we walk out. Horse Branch is continuing to escalate. And a lot of people with dog, that seems to be a very favorite dog walking route. So in the vicinity of Valley Farm, between there and the sewer plant, that's the most popular walking route. We're coordinating with the school district so that when we're gonna massage where the trail is that goes through the easement that they've granted where the 2 new schools are being built. So that'll then connect the schools all the way with Valley Farm. Now, we have a grant for that, but we can't really open up Horse Branch until we have a bridge that goes from the south side of the bank across to the north side of Horse Branch. If we don't, without that bridge, people have to walk through Valley Farm property. So the Valley Farm Homeowners Association and a homeowner own like the first 40 feet of that if you come in off the street that's in Valley Farm. So we can't advertise for people to trespass on somebody else's property to get on a city trail. So we need that's that $50,000 bridge that I'm talking about.
So, may I?
Yes.
What's the length of the bridge, more or less?
35 feet bank to bank. The DOT's estimate 5 years ago for a bridge, it's $1,000 a lineal foot for the simplest bridge. This is not a simple bridge because it's 35 feet and you can't put a post in the riverbed, so it has to be strong enough. Logs can just barely do it. So anyways, but that's...
So you think it's a little bit more sophisticated than a Eagle Scout project or several Eagle Scout projects?
The challenge is that we could get volunteers to do it, but then that increases the liability for the city because you have to get an engineer to verify it, and we've got the plans from the forest department to build it. It's not that complicated. If you remember, we opened up President's Trail last year. To get a contractor to build those 2 bridges, it took us 8 months to find a contractor that would build the bridges. Nobody wants to build bridges. So it's just challenging to find the contractor. If you go to a bridge a pedestrian trail bridge company, get your checkbook out. Because what I'm saying is 50,000 would be closer to 100,000 if somebody who does it for a living would come in and do that.
President's Trail, if I may, has 2 wonderful bridges, but they're probably a third the length of what is needed for Horse Branch, and that's where the money comes in.
Yeah. So back to the original question, Pritchard Loop's being used a lot, of course, and then Horse Branch is next. Cemetery Loop, which is the oldest in the city besides, the number 1 would definitely be Round Bowl Spring. That gets heavy usage, and that leads into the cemeteries, which people walk there. Cemetery Loop we're working on, that's never been surfaced properly. So now we're back into a mitigation to get the trail bed good enough so that it can actually be hardened that goes there. But that's probably a good example of what I forecast is to be a future issue. Because nobody wants problems. I know you all got elected just so you could listen to problems, so I understand that. But most people don't. So as cemetery loops never been finished properly, the problems rise. Next thing I would forecast is folks who have to walk through water to get into Horse Branch Creek, or Valley Farm complaining that residents are using their land to access Horse Branch without that bridge. Then there's gonna be a tree down, and people are gonna complain, I've been walking that, now I can't because the tree's there. So the good news is we have all these resources. The bad news is they're gonna have to be maintained. And that's why we want volunteers and try to get some fundraising. So we don't burden the taxpayers, because nothing's free. So we have 200 acres of property that we're opening up for conservation use and recreation use. There's a cost to that. And it's just around the corner. So the commission's trying to get ahead of that and get these volunteers, but it's a challenge.
Okay, thanks. There are no questions for Phil? If not, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Update, appreciate that. Discussion of the merits of a zoning ordinance requiring applicants for zoning permits of variance to provide a report from city engineer Watley assessing potential traffic impacts from such an application.
Yeah, Mayor, I had, this kind of started as a result of our retreat, where we had talked about the number of tighter controls that the planning department had put together for zoning. And I think the question was brought up, it might have been Betsy if I'm not mistaken, kind of, well, what other things can we do? And I had nothing on the top of my head at that time, but since then I've thought of it, and one of them is exactly this item here. The citizen survey we did talks about how important traffic is to the quality of life here in Madison, to our citizens. And it occurred to me that quite often we have zoning applications come to us for variances, for text amendments and so forth. It seems to me it would be beneficial to have a requirement that we have some evaluation of what impacts that would have on traffic. And that could be part of the application process. I don't want to get too far ahead, because when I wanted to add this item, it was kind of before we have the next item on talking about the planning department rewrite, because there's something about traffic in there regarding conditional use permits. But it seemed to me, in talking with Aaron Wadley, who's our city and our county engineer, that it's a fairly common practice when there are zoning applications made by the public to have a component to assess what potential traffic issues that zoning change would result in. And that cost, in talking with Aaron, he says anywhere from, it could be as simple as a check-off box in the application process saying no impact. For example, someone wants a variance to build a pool inside a side yard setback. Well, that would be clearly no impact. Aaron could just sign that for free. Manager Klim could just check that box, and we know there's no impact. For things that would have an impact, perhaps our city engineer could look at it. He thought anywhere from, depending on the size of the project, anywhere from $1,000 to do a report, maybe as much as $1,500. He was kind of very vague about what that cost would be, but that could be a cost that could be passed on, not to the city, but to the applicant. But those numbers are very vague, and I don't want to commit to either one of those. But it just seemed like we should be looking on a more regular basis, required by zoning, in my opinion, that we have an assessment of what traffic impacts our actions may result in. And we don't have that now, with the exception of the conditional use permits. Now, I know in the planned rewrite, there is a mention of that is required for conditional use. But it's not required for zoning changes, for variances, all those kinds of things. So I thought it was something that we should talk about. I'd kind of like to get a sense whether I'm the only one who thinks that's important. I wanted to bring it up at a work session so I can get a sense, is that something that we all see merit in, or is it simply just me?
So are you talking about new businesses that's being built in town, or out business being built outside the city that's gonna bring traffic into the city, or?
Yeah, a bit, for example, there's a vacant lot, for example, in our corridor, for example. And someone comes to us and they want to do a zoning change, maybe to build something different. And it comes to us for a decision. Well, to me, I want that decision to be well informed. And part of that information I would be seeking would be what impact would that application have on traffic? Seems like a pretty normal thing to want to know about when we're asked. If it doesn't come to us and they can build what they want by right, then I guess that's a whole different situation. But it's coming to us for a change of some sort, a variance, a zoning change, a map change, then I think it should be required that they give us that information. And the applicant could pay for it. It shouldn't be coming out of our taxpayers' money. If they want to build something that's now a vacant lot, that's fine. Along with meeting the requirements of the zoning, they would also need to provide some information, either through Aaron Wadley or whoever else they might want to put a report together, so we know what impacts that would have on traffic, because that is such an important issue to our citizens. That's kind of what I'm thinking there.
So I'm thinking though, we advertise our city, and we advertise for people to visit our city. So do we really, how can you stop people from coming through town? I mean,
Well,
I
I'm
think,
not
if I may,
suggesting that by any
No,
means, but
he's not saying
I just
that.
think when we make these decisions to make changes to allow things, part of what should go into that information on which we base our decision should be traffic impacts. That's what I'm thinking. It's
So I
not-
guess-
I'm not saying that, I mean, I would be very reluctant to approve a zoning change without having some professional that knows more than me tell me what impacts that might have on traffic. That seems like a common sense part of what we should be presented with, is my thinking.
Yeah, it seems to me, so if we take as Eric mentioned, we take a open piece of property that is suitable is zoned for whatever construction, and by right, someone can go in and just build something if it fits within the commercial parameters or whatever, and that's fine, but for a zoning change then, which is pretty serious for us, I mean, we're very concerned when anybody wants a zoning change, and to come in, and then, so all of a sudden, to determine, I don't think it would be terribly burdensome in addition to us considering a zoning change, to also ask what kind of impact would that traffic have. We kind of know if it's already zoned and we're doing something within the current zoning regulations, then that, whatever the traffic is, that's kind of maybe already tied up into to what you could do by right. But if we do a zoning change, or then maybe we need that's kind of outside the parameter of what we've already agreed on that can happen in that zoning. So I think it might be worthwhile to have a traffic component. I wonder if planning has any comment about that one way or the other. Would you be open to asking?
I would definitely want to hear
Molly?
planning's opinions on it, as I would the rest of you as well.
No, exactly.
And the city manager too, but I would definitely want planning's opinion on what they think about it and how burdensome that could be on applicants. I don't want to be overly burdensome, but I
Right,
think the
exactly.
our responsibility regarding traffic and on behalf of our citizens is kind of a strong one, I think.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes,
may,
sir.
I think it has some merit, Eric, to, if it's a significant change. I mean, if it's we allow, some of them are just so similar, but we don't have them listed as an approved use. So I don't know how you determine that, maybe through the planning staff and/or Aaron Wadley. And if Aaron can, through his retaining fee or however he's compensated, let us know. I would be afraid it could get overly burdensome if we don't really talk through some parameters and determine what even initiates that requirement. So, I mean, obviously the one about the pool being built
5 feet closer.
Mr. Mayor, I think that Aaron and Molly could get together and figure out, come up with a logical trigger. Obviously, we don't want to do a traffic study on a pool or a shed, but
Right.
there's got to be some a definition on what triggers it, and I would think that would best come from our city engineer and our planner.
And I would differentiate between the traffic studies that we've seen on a number of applications recently. I mean, they're like 75 pages. They gotta cost 50 grand. I'm not talking about anything that detailed where they're actually counting cars. I think when we had the annexation request south of I-20, that was a 70-page traffic study that I'm sure cost a lot of money on behalf of the applicant. I'm not thinking quite that difficult or expensive or burdensome, because that is a concern, I agree.
So if we could allow Mr. Watley, Molly, Planning Department to get together and come back to us with a report, would you mind? We appreciate that.
Yeah, I would like that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
It seems like there are other players in that conversation. When I think in terms of fire department, for example, and traffic, can they access places through whatever development we're doing there? Police, are the police involved in that conversation? And I'm hoping that we do that in our conversations about those kinds of things, and maybe we don't need to formalize it, but I'd love to know that we are asking those questions.
I appreciate that point. That reminds me of when Chief McIlvaine was here today, when he had his, I guess, open houses for citizens when you first came on. I was at one of those for my district, and one of the questions from the public to the police, I don't think it was John, it was another high-ranking member of the police department. They asked him, what are the big concerns you have about crime? What is it in Madison? And I was very surprised. The answer was a one-word answer from this police official. He said traffic.
Yeah.
So and that just kind of reiterated the importance of what I'm talking about.
And I also wonder, if I may, that if our building code and the sort of hoops one has to jump through even just to build something might already incorporate,
The
fire,
impact.
or fire department accessibility and that sort of thing, that's already built in. I'm not that familiar with our building codes to know that, but I imagine that has to be an element, a component already of any construction.
Thank you. Okay, urban redevelopment plan report, Mayor Peters Reed.
Good morning. I have your report this morning. The third project advisory group was held November 25th, during which the draft action plans, which were available on the project website, were discussed, and an initial concept planning visioning session was led by Sandy Creek Landcraft. The project advisory group elected to hold one additional meeting. The date will be determined to review the draft document once completed. And that's my report for this morning.
Thank you so much for that report. Joint Comprehensive Plan Report. That's from Melancey.
That would be me. We started that process yesterday. We met with the consultants and talked about scheduling and process and how they're going to access the different elements of the process. We're going to actually kick it off as part of our meeting on February the 9th with the required the planning process and the announcement of the public hearing. We're going to develop a website that is going to follow the process and develop it. And then I'm going to be the person who is going to be the link to that. Molly's going to help me do that. I said yesterday, this is yet another thing that I'm doing for the first time. So this has been a real experience for me. But thank you for being patient with me as I go through this learning process and do all the listening that obviously goes along with it. But yesterday was enlightening to me. Obviously, we're going to involve the county and the Buckhead and Bostwick and Rutledge, thank you very much. Almost forgot Rutledge. But the whole process and the development of that whole process.
If I may just say a few words in addition to that, I want to start just by thanking council and the Board of Commissioners and all of our other city leadership for having the foresight to come back together. It's been 20 years. This is we're coming back together for a joint comprehensive planning process. I think it is going to be significantly important for the city moving forward. And so yesterday was a really great beginning to that. We got to meet the team from TSW. We got to talk through just some project basics and kicking off. We got to take them around town and show them the sites. Many of them actually worked on our transportation plan, so they're familiar with the sites here in town, but they got to see Morgan County more broadly. All comprehensive planning processes have to begin with a public hearing that declares that we are starting the process. So that is what Councilmember Malinowski was referring to. That will happen on February 9th. We'll be placing legal notices in the next 2 editions of the Morgan County Citizen, as well as some display ads for those people who don't scan the legal sections. And we'll be putting those same announcements up on our city website and our social media accounts. There's not really anything to respond to at that meeting, though there is an opportunity for public comment if anyone would like to come and share with you and us any thoughts they have as we begin this process. But it's really just a moment in time to declare that we are beginning the process.
If I could ask, what is the time and the location for that meeting?
It will be at your regular meeting on February 9th here
Oh,
in this room. Yes,
Our council meeting?
correct. Yep.
Is that including the county?
So each jurisdiction has to hold their own public hearing. So those will be held throughout the month of February.
And the county took part in the meeting you're talking about yesterday?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Councilman Malinowski. At this time, Molly, planning and zoning.
Absolutely. I'm going to take you through just a few highlights here and then answer any questions that you might have. So I want to start with what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed in the amendments are the types of zoning actions that are allowed, the 4 types of zoning actions, that text amendment, map amendment, variance, and conditional use. Those are still there. Who can apply for those amendments? Those are the same. We discussed at our previous work session a few alternatives. Those didn't seem to be of interest to you all, so we actually maintained the status quo in terms of the types of actions, who can apply, and finally, the final decision-making authority. And so that is with you all, with the council. What changes did we make? General formatting. As I went through these, I noticed that each one of the different zoning actions was formatted a little bit differently. So if you were someone going through, you might get certain information in section 1 and 2 that you didn't get in section 1 and 2 of the next zoning action. So we actually just tried to line those up so you're getting the same type of information in the same section for each zoning action. The use of terms here in Article 2. I'm always, when I'm looking at any updates to our code, I'm always assuring that any terms that we're using refer to an actual term of art in our definition section. And so anytime it's not, I make those shifts and changes for you all. We did make one formatting change that's a little more significant in that we took all application contents and shifted those to a new section at the end. Many of our zoning actions require the same types of application content, so it didn't make sense to duplicate those efforts, especially given the amount of detail we wanted to include, for instance, in the site plan requirements. So it made sense to shift all of those into its own section, be very thorough and detailed, and then direct everyone to that section from the zoning action. We did make, I believe, our application requirements a bit more robust, not necessarily requiring new things, but being very explicit about what we already required. And what I mean by that is oftentimes when someone would come in with a zoning action and we said the ordinance said they had to have a site plan, there weren't necessarily a lot of specifics related to what that looked like. And so we thought it would be most helpful to go ahead and just lay that out for everyone. Now, of course, there are going to be differences in, say, a single residential application versus a large commercial application. So we did actually make some allowances in there for anything that was, I believe, 2 units and under for residential. The site plan requirements could be reduced by our city manager. Let's see. We did shift the requirement for a letter of support or a COA from our HPC or CDC to a set of draft minutes. So we're not eliminating the requirement that they go through that conceptual or preliminary review at all. We're simply saying that a letter of support or a COA, letter of support or a COA does not necessarily have to come out of that, but the draft minutes showing their discussion, their detailed discussion, be there for you all, because that was really the purpose of that requirement, and that is what was suggested by our staff member who staffs both HPC and CDC, Ken Coker. Now, I do just want to go over one last thing, because I believe variances were sort of the impetus for us looking at this section. So you all asked, was there some flexibility? Was there not? If so, how much flexibility? We did look at a number of other ordinances, specifically always looking at Morgan County as well, trying to align those where we can. And the variance procedures in most of the ordinances we looked at are very much the same as ours. And so I think you have a couple of options here. What I've written for you is some new titles and preambles to the zoning actions, text amendments, map amendments, and conditional uses that allow for a little more flexibility. And we called that considerations for legislative decisions for text amendments or map amendments. So considerations for decisions, and allowed for you to consider all of those items and make a decision, but not necessarily having to meet a certain criteria. For variances, we used a different language there to set that aside as slightly different, and we wrote that as standards for approval. And so that requires that they meet all of those items for approval. Now, that, I hope, clarifies the difference in the decision-making process, but it doesn't necessarily allow the flexibility that some of you may or may not want. So I think you have a couple of options, and it's something that I would want to discuss with Tony. I believe you could use the same title and preamble in your variance section, considerations for decision-making, and that would give you the flexibility to decide which of those standards you felt were most appropriate in that instance. The other option, if you feel that you want it to still be standards for approval, is you could reduce the number of standards, and there could be a set of 2 to 3 standards that you felt were most important that everyone meet, no matter what. That would, I think, give you a little more flexibility, but you'd have to be very specific about which standards. I think my recommendation for you all is either you decide you want the flexibility and you shift to just considerations for decision and leave all of those considerations, because I do think it is important for discussion purposes, or you decide that you don't want the flexibility and you keep it as standard for decisions. And I'll let Tony jump in if he'd like to at all. I believe that is all I have. Yes.
Are there any questions for?
Did you want to add something, Tony, before?
Jumping in, you know, it's really good for council to have options in front of them while they consider the precision with which they do good assessment.
Oh, you don't have mine.
So you are, all of those are valid. They're really valid, good standards. And I just think it's going to help you tremendously to have a list and to be able to go through and pick things that go with the particularly zoning action that you're taking. So.
And legally speaking, you think they have the ability to either make them standards that all have to be met, or considerations that some can be met and some don't have to be met?
Or a combination of those two, you know, having the fixed ones and then the optional ones. All of that, it's hard to do zoning actions on the fly, so that type of conditional preparation is really helpful to council. And absolutely, the better drafting you do, thought process ahead of time, the easier it is for us to enforce them. So.
If I may, so we kind of seemed like we have a couple options here to either to not be flexible and kind of let some of the standards be met and not met, or be straight up, all these standards have to be met. But I think that was the whole impetus for the change to begin with. Either we keep it the way it is, which is be flexible, or we insist.
Well, I would actually say the current language, I believe, does not allow flexibility. It's required findings for approval. I think that language is very clear in that they should be meeting all of those standards to
Okay.
be approved. I think if you want flexibility, it definitely needs to change to something such as considerations for approval, or if you want it to remain firm, we can continue at required findings for approval is fine, or we can say standards for approval as well. Either one of those works. But the question goes back to you. There is no ordinance that we reviewed that I could find where there was a specific number. I know that was something, perhaps Rick, that you had mentioned in the past. If there was a number, 3 out of 8 that had to be met. There was no specific number that was ever itemized in any of the ordinances we looked at for approval. But there are, and most of the ones I have found did have, I think, more stringent language in terms of those required findings. But I don't think that there's anything precluding you legally that would require that you do not allow for more flexibility if you so desire.
So when I see, Molly, on the 1130.8,
Yes,
the red line,
yes.
is it the planning department's, excuse me, is it your recommendation that all the standards need to be met?
Is it my recommendation?
Well, your department's, I mean, you put it in here as your suggested revision.
No, so what I put in here was following the standard protocol that you already have in your ordinance.
Well, why does it say here, all of the following standards must be met for approval to be
Because my
considered?
understanding was that you were confused by the language you had in here, which in my interpretation, required findings for approval means all of them are required. So I was simply trying to add language to make it clear my interpretation of the ordinance as it already stands.
Because that, I mean, if all of them, if all 8 standards need to be met by variances, really. Because number 4, excuse me, number 4 is like the definition of a variance, in my opinion. Does this variance give any special privilege denied to other properties in the district?
Right, and we've
That's
talked
kind of
about
what a
that.
variance is. You're getting something different than everybody else.
So we've talked about a precedent we've had here that I think shows not a concurrence of a special privilege, and that was the Harris Street setback variances. They had legal lots of record that were subdivided in the 50s. They were never combined and re-subdivided at any time. They owned that property. They came to pull a permit for building single-family residential units on their legally divided or subdivided property. And the front setback, which is established by our mean building line, was behind their back property line at that point. So the variance they were requesting was for a shift of the front yard setback requirement so that they could build a single-family residential home on a legal lot of record in a residential zone.
See, I think that's a perfect rationale for granting a variance. I mean, I think that's where variances need to, that's the direction they need to go. Not do, the folks, God love them, we love people coming into our community and adding to the vibrance of what our community is. But, the folks buy a small little lot and then all of a sudden they want to put a pool in, or they want this, or they want that. Well, there wasn't one. And then, I'm sorry, but we've seen applications that go, it's a hardship if we can't have a pool. And I'm just going, I'm not sure if that really is a hardship for your family. So, what do we do? Do we allow the special consideration, or do we, and I think I was the one. You and I both had discussed it. I think the whole council had. When we get these variance requests, and the planning department has made their recommendations, and there's like 2 checks out of 7, or 8, or 3 checks, and all of a sudden we're like, well, I just wanted it, personally, I just really wanted it tightened up so that we aren't put on the spot to make really a subjective decision. I want it to be straight up and just go, nope, you didn't get it, sorry. You didn't meet all the standards that we wanted. So I don't know. That's kind of where I am with that.
I think, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
I think some of this started because someone asked me, why was I okay with the pool being on the side of the yard? And I said that it's part of our variance. Variances is in our ordinance. And if we're not gonna use it, then it shouldn't be there. So literally, everything that we're talking about started with a comment from me. And I think that's when Eric said that we need to look into all variances. And we did need to look at them because it was not straightforward. I would rather that it reads straightforward than trying to guess what I'm voting on. Because if it's there for a reason, and if it's there, I'm going to use it. So it all started with me. So I think it should be straightforward, and it should be straightforward for all of us. A pool might not be important to one person, where to someone else it could possibly be important because you don't know the use of that pool. So when I speak for all citizens. So the pool could be for someone that maybe was paralyzed and maybe they need to put somebody in, and the only place that they could put it was on the side of their house. I don't know. But whatever we're gonna do, let's do it for all citizens, and it did start with me. So let's figure out what we need to do.
And I will say variances are a really good bellwether for portions of our ordinance that aren't working for us anymore. And
Yes.
so if you would like, I think that there are sections of our ordinance that you might be seeing more variance requests come into us in the last
Yes.
couple of years.
Yes.
People are not moving as readily anymore, so they are wanting to do more with their property now. And I think there are several variances that have come up time and again that we could look at and see if there is more flexibility
Yes.
that would preclude them even having to come forward to you all for a variance. Now, it would mean a reduction in our current requirements if you all see fit for that.
Well, I could name one right off the top, and that's 15-foot separation from outbuildings such as garages
Yes.
from the main residence.
Yeah.
We're told that that is not a fire issue. My only thing is maybe within the historic district, having that visual separation reinforces the idea of a detached
Separate, yes.
garage. And as we shrink that separation, depending on what angle you're looking at the house, you may not get that. But I
And
did have a
HBC will
question
still have that
for
authority.
Tony, who's fairly new in this whole process. Did you get a chance to read the letter from the Madison Historic Coalition?
I have not.
Okay, I think it's really important that you read that prior to our doing anything. There's a lot of questions that are legal questions regarding verbiage, shall to will, and considerations from standards and all those things that I would very much like to get a legal opinion on. So it's been distributed to all of us, and we'll make sure you get a copy. I'd like you to read that. Sure.
The legal standard, not just
Microphone.
criteria of review
Mike.
of variances is, it's really outlining what you want to allow in that area. This is just an exception to the law.
That's right.
And so you recited the legal standard, which is, it's got to be applied equally to
That's
everybody
right.
in the exception area.
That's right.
And so this is a great focus. The word hardship needs definition. It really
It
doesn't
does.
mean anything, and that's what y'all
That's
want to
exactly
take
right.
up as particularly events that deserve consideration. And Bellwether is exactly right. When you get a variance every other week on a setback requirement, you need to change the law. If you keep granting the variance, just make it consistent for everybody. And it's that equal protection issue that you're trying to match.
Yes.
It's a great thought process, really
Thank you.
good. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, through you, ask Tony or Molly a question, and that is, I don't have a crystal ball, but I have seen the future. I've been in communities, I've worked in communities that are way further along in terms of growth, and so I know you're going to see more variance requests in the future. I mean, it's just common sense. As lots are more and more marginalized with what's left, people come forward. And I think the challenge, and I got this from my conversation with Mr. Malinowski, and that is, it's one thing to rule on a specific application before you, but whether you know it or not, you're kind of setting a precedent. And so we're going to get height, we're going to get density, we're going to, and I know I've worked in some communities that have dealt with this well, and I've worked in some communities that it's been a disaster because you wake up and it's death by 1,000 cuts, and you fundamentally have changed your community through variance. And so that's what I know Betsy's concerned about and Jim's concerned about and others are concerned about, and that is, I mean, how do you deal with the fact that you have an application before you, but you're also setting a precedent? So that's why I think it's good that both councilors brought this forward, because we don't have anything pending. We don't have something pending before us right now, and you can more globally look or philosophically look at this. But do you have any advice in terms of the precedent issue and how communities
You're dead, I agree 100%. The more development, the more variance issues. You've got to be able to say no. But that's sort of the biggest issue is being able to keep people from coming in and just varying everything about your code. That can't be the policy. It's going to make you miserable, what that's going to do. So it's deciding exactly what the variance issue is. There are a lot of people who want to do things differently, mixed use, be allowed to build higher. Those are not variance issues. Those are code issues. You want to change the way you do things, change it for everybody.
That's right.
But the variance is really sort of fine-tuned, in particular if something happened that the code is too harsh and too limiting, and that should be a very restricted and not happen very often. So it's great to get the language that you're looking for right, and let the planning department say, we don't vary that, but go talk to the council if you want to change the code. They can do that. You can do that, but they got to do it for everybody. And so it's a great thought.
I think that's a really important thought to keep in mind is that, again, this idea that the variances tell us where our code might be lacking, whether
Sure.
it's too restrictive or
Right.
too, well, it's not going to show you when it's too unrestricted, but where it is too restrictive and not allowing the type of development and use that you want to see in your community. So if it is restricting a variance process, restricting something where you say, rationally, I'm not opposed to this. Through the variance process, I can't allow it.
Yes.
Then that's when we can, you all
Yes.
direct us to revisit certain sections of the ordinance that are not allowing the type of development and use you want to see in the community.
As an example, if I may, so 15 feet for a garage or an outbuilding next to a property, or 15 feet or 20, whatever it is for a pool, and somebody wants it 2.5 feet or 5 feet less, is that necessary? I mean, was that an arbitrary number to begin with? How do we pick? Is it tied to safety? Is it tied to noise?
I can't speak to the 15 feet. That was in the code when I got here. I
Right.
can say that the pool setback requirement was 20 feet when I got here. We reduced it to 10 feet. The assumption is that most home pools are not going to go more than 10 feet down into the ground. And that if you had any sort of, we're just using the geometry, right? So if there was a collapse of some kind, it would not impede upon the neighboring property owners at that point. And so 10 feet deep, 10 feet wide, sort of thing. But it doesn't mean that we can't reassess that as well, if you would like.
Well, and I thought the precedent issue, I thought the precedent, because each property is unique and it has unique circumstances and unique neighbors who either do or don't have a problem with what they're asking for. I thought that, and I'm not arguing legality with an attorney, but I thought that's how we were protected from a precedent.
My understanding, and obviously Tony is our expert here, is that it has to do with similarly situated property. And so you are creating a precedent when you allow a pool to be 3 feet from a property line versus 10 on a quarter-acre lot with a 2,000 square foot home centered on the lot. Then the neighbor who has a quarter-acre lot with a 2,000 square foot home centered in the middle of the lot also wants a pool of the same size and distance. That is a similarly situated lot and hardship. And Tony, tell me if I'm incorrect in that. So absolutely, if someone came in and said, well, I've got a 1 acre lot and I've got my house over here, but I also want to put a pool 3 feet. That is a different set of facts for consideration. Am I correct in that interpretation?
That's the hardest part about variance is there are a bunch of variables that go into the consideration. What y'all just talked about was you can set a rule that you really like, and then you can give some flexibility to administratively for them to actually have an administrative variance for pools. You just got to be careful, and houses are houses and setbacks are setbacks, and that's the common condition. It's not, I got 3 acres, well, nobody's around me, so nobody's going to complain. Well, that's not the way equal protection works.
Right.
It is, all houses are all houses, and if you're going to let one do it, you got to let all of them do it. And so you don't get subjective standard, as a council, the Constitution doesn't like it, and neither do the courts. They just don't like it being, well, I like this guy, I don't like that guy.
Right.
And so that's what we're protecting against, and they're gonna go in that direction when
That's right.
rules are not applied consistently. So really good to think about what you really care about as far as giving flexibility and what you don't.
Mhm.
Make the rule where it doesn't even come to you. It's what you were talking about. It's let's set the rule.
Mhm.
If you don't meet the criteria, don't bring it to me.
Done.
But then everybody's gonna come in with the handicapped child who needs
That's
poke.
exactly
And-
right.
And so there is criteria there that can be really drafted into the ordinance. And no matter what happens, the real hardship, you can take it on and change your ordinance to something that specifically fit. It's gonna take a little longer. Variances are not necessary to get for the compassion to create what you need to create. It's just gotta go through the ordinance change process. You always have that option, and that way you're protecting everybody the same. So,
Thank you.
And Rick,
Thank you.
as you know, unfortunately, we understand that variances apply only to one property. We know that intellectually, we know that legally. Our public, our citizens, they don't always see those nuances, as you know, and they're the first to say, well, so-and-so down the corner did this, and that guy over there did that, and
Yep.
so that's the challenge we always face. Let me ask a process question if I could. So this, I think, was initiated directly from, probably initially from you, Carrie, but I think more recently from Betsy regarding variances. But yeah, we got a whole bunch more here in this rewrite than just
Yes.
the variance section. And I was a little surprised, to be honest, that this went, I appreciate our manager pulling it from the planning and zoning agenda, like, oh my goodness. That little kind of almost a offhanded comment by Betsy led to this whole big rewrite
Mhm.
going right to planning and zoning. What happened to us? You know,
That
so
was
anyway, so what?
My human failing and misunderstanding what your directive was.
Yeah.
So I
Okay, well-
simply heard a desire to see a cleanup of that section of the ordinance and understood that you wanted it to simply go through the normal process. And so then I was told to remove it and did so.
I was glad it was a misunderstanding that John was able to catch and clear up. So going forward now, what is the next step? As you've gathered, I think I want to have our attorney look this over to address some of the issues that were brought up in the letter from the coalition regarding wording and a bunch of other things. What is what is your recommended process, Molly, going forward at this point?
I think the attorney should review it. You all should tell us if you want flexibility with variance standards or not. And if you don't, I actually think the ordinance as it stands is sufficient for your purposes, and it needs no alterations if you do not want the formatting changes and the sort of cleanup use of terms in Article 2 and the application contents shifted to another section. I don't think any of those are necessary if you want to continue to have the variance standards be required for all standards to be met.
And just so I can, sure I understand, when I see the reading that all must be met, that's your interpretation of what the current
That is correct.
zoning says, although obviously, as you well know, we have
Right.
not been applying it that way.
Correct.
But with all due respect, that's not what Frank Jenkins, that's not been, when I've asked him, his interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So it's open for interpretation, which is why we're here
That's exactly
now.
right.
you know.
That's right.
Well, it's like, as you know from a lot of planning department reports recently, the new green check and red X thing, and one of our recent ones, I saw for one standard, the combination of the red X and the green check, meaning I assume that you're unsure whether it met that standard or not, and we're
Or that
supposed.
perhaps it met portions of the standard
Yeah.
and not portions
Right,
of
so-
other portions of the standard, yeah.
So even within, even.
There has been that debate many
Yeah,
times
yeah,
over,
indeed.
some of us feel like it does meet
Yes.
standard seven, others of
Exactly.
us
Yes.
feel like it doesn't meet.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that I think review by Tony, absolutely, but I think even prior to that is really your decision about whether you want the flexibility or not. And if you want any amendment to just that description and preamble, to be very clear about whether it allows for some flexibility or not, would be the only amendment necessary. But it would have to start with you all deciding if you want it or not.
If I may add to this slightly, in terms of might add some flexibility, would be to drill down a little more deeply on our definitions of some of the requirements of the standards, such as hardship. So what
What is
actually
hardship?
constitutes hardship? And if we
What
have
is hardship?
a really thorough definition of
Yes.
that, then I think that sort of builds in some flexibility, if you will, that might not otherwise be there if we're all sitting around trying to figure out, well, is that really a hardship, is it
Right.
not, that sort of thing. In addition, also, on the, hold on, there was one other thing, anyway, there's several, special privilege, what defines special privilege, and how do we define that, and can we, so we can look at the definition of that and go, oh yeah, this is really, or this is not a special privilege. So, without acting,
The other thing I would say is that perhaps before you make that decision, would you all like a work session devoted specifically to variances, the standards that exist, and we can coordinate with John and Deborah to bring you that training. We, of course, would not do that we are not lawyers, so we would not do that. We would have Tony assist us or whatever attorney John would like us to coordinate with. But that would be the other option if you want some additional discussion and a deliberation on each of those standards and picking those apart a little bit.
And I think it would be good to have another work session just to talk about
Yeah.
this.
Molly, can you remind us of kind of have a senior moment on this, on the transportation plan calendar, what the schedule is on that?
Yeah, the transportation plan calendar, it is going before the Planning and Zoning Commission this coming Thursday. So next Thursday, 5:30, they have requested that the planner, the principal in charge of that plan, Bert Kirkendall with TSW, be there virtually to answer all of their questions. And I expect a motion of some sort at that meeting. They did have it before them at their previous meeting, and felt that they needed a second meeting to ask questions before providing a recommendation to you.
So
all.
you're hoping that 9 February, it'll come back to the council? or-
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
hoping, yes, that is correct.
So, I hate to say this, but the issue that y'all are debating never gets fixed and never gets resolved.
Wow.
No,
It just-
we're gonna break.
not
It will never
Wow.
go away.
Wow.
It will never go
We
away.
want the easy fix.
Yeah,
No.
I congratulate Molly on starting cleanup and fixing things that she recognizes. And so it would never have bypassed you because zoning ordinance doesn't change without council seeing it. But it goes to planning because that's the way the law requires it to be, planning commission. She was doing all of those things are really great things to do. And cleanups are not something that rises to your level, and they were in constant motion. Frank and I agree on a lot of things, and we've disagreed on a lot of things over the years, but Frank doesn't get to say. The process is already fixed. Molly says, and then Frank can appeal, or whoever the lawyer is who disagrees with Molly's opinion. There's already a methodology in your code to fix interpretive challenges. You don't have to worry about that one, but the important thing is what Molly says for everybody, because that's going to be the easy way through. And when you're not hearing things or reading things in that code, and she cleans it up and says, this is the way I interpret it, and now it's clear, that's exactly the right thing to do, because then Frank knows too. And so the process is just right on point, and how much y'all get involved before it comes to you as a recommendation from planning is probably going to be a lot of issues you will never have to look at except a red line on the sheet. I would let it go on through that process and then come back up to you, unless it's obviously it's variance things you need to get straight the way you want it. But other things, I think the process you're using is, and the system is already set up to deal with it. And when we get finished with this one, it'll start all over again, because there'll be new words to interpret and new areas, but we'll be better. It'll go
Yeah.
away for a while and it'll be better. So process sounded perfect and really in good shape.
and I've often said in my years serving here, when we get into contentious issues and we have legal advice coming from two different sides of it coming to us, I always say, why don't we listen to the attorney who we're paying? So I appreciate it. The reason I reference Frank is because he's the guy that we've paid for years to come and give us training on our zoning and on zoning generally, and that question's been asked numerous times. And
Oh,
so-
yeah, he's a great
Yeah.
lawyer. He's litigated all over the state. You know, I like him a lot.
Sure.
He's a good guy, but he's a lawyer, and so he's gonna come back and tell you, well, it was opposite of what I just said, but because he's got a position to take on those things.
So,
And
if I may, kind of clarify something or check something with you as well. So initially, this started with variances, and we went to planning and said, you know, can we look at this? There's some confusion, should be flexible, not flexible, that's fine. At that time, with that initial conversation, planning said, yes, but we want to look at the whole code. We want to look at all of it, as opposed to just variances, which I really appreciated, which means we weren't specifically just targeting something that might look like, I don't know, we were trying to manipulate the system or change something in a way that didn't affect the whole code. So I really appreciate you all going through and really cleaning up a lot of that language that was outside the realm of variances. And I think, Eric, if I heard you right, you made a comment about, well, why did we just stick to variances, and why are there changes throughout? So if I heard that right, and I'm thinking that was initially why, which I thought was brilliant, really, as long as they're looking at one thing, let's take that opportunity to just tweak some things like can and shall type of language, and special instead of conditional, and so forth. So, and I think that's really good, which doesn't really put us on the spot of really just trying to target variances and make changes there without really examining our whole ordinance and getting it all kind of tidied up. So thank you for that work. That was a lot of work.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, there's certainly a lot of work went into this, and I appreciate all the time that went into Molly and Monica putting this together. One quick comment on variances. I've been on the council for 8 years, so I've become somewhat used to the, I guess, emotional and intellectual angst that comes with every single variance. Councilman Malinowski over there is our newest member, and I've seen, you're not used to the angst that comes with dealing with these things, and I've seen you're very uncomfortable with the fact that there's no real definition of how we're supposed to do this.
Certainly not black and white, is it?
Yeah.
What I experienced was, I think the first 3 meetings that I attended, we had variances in front of us.
Yes.
And it was like, and each one seemed to have similar points about it, but it seemed like there was a hidden assumption that if a person talked to their neighbors and their neighbors approved, then somehow we were supposed to approve.
Right.
And that's when I started
That's right.
feeling uncomfortable. It was like, wait a minute, where are the lines here? You know, it seems like there should be rules that everybody is following.
And our hands are even more tied because of the ban on ex parte communication when it comes to variances. So we can't talk to anybody about it until we actually come to the public hearing, and I've disagreed with that in the past, but that's the policy of the city, and to me, it makes it more difficult to make those decisions, but that's my opinion.
So it sounds to me, because I'm a next steps kind of person, that you all want the next work session to actually, we set aside probably a considerable chunk of time to discuss each standard and perhaps some vagaries that exist there that you would like some more clarification on. And I will coordinate with John and Deborah to bring that to you all in the way that John feels is most appropriate. So.
And that might allow time for Tony to then look at some of the verbiage changes, which, not being an attorney, I have no idea what makes sense and what doesn't when it comes to some of these wording changes.
Thanks, Molly.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
This is great progress.
Okay. Corridor Design Commissioner, 2-year terms. Ken is not here, so
We're gonna postpone it?
I don't think there's nothing urgent. We could do it Monday night if we need to.
Well, I think it's basically, we've got 5 applicants and 4 positions, and people are, they're all one, there are 4 that are.
Four are,
returning.
yeah, and 4 are incumbents.
And as a liaison, Rick, not that you necessarily, there were a lot, whatever, do you have any thoughts about that? Oh, I'm sorry, I have my phone. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Eric kicked me off being a liaison for corridor. No.
He did?
I'll tell you my take on it. My position on it is, I think that, I always appreciate the people who serve. I appreciate those who volunteer, but if we can keep the continuity because of the training and their experience, then that's what I typically vote to do is, keep those who want to remain. And then hope we can find a spot for someone who wanted to serve here, but perhaps somewhere else.
Right. No, I think
I
that's.
agree.
I agree, but Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
Rick, how long has, the 4 that are currently on there been on that, commission?
I have no idea. My computer died, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I wouldn't know even if I had.
Even if you, yeah,
Uh,
because I know we're saying keep the same 4 on there, which I do agree,
Well, I
but we
know-
also need,
So, I'm sorry.
okay, I was gonna say, you're gonna talk over me today, Eric. We also need new and fresh ideas as well. I don't know much about the quarter design, so,
Well, I think Tripp is our newest appointee.
okay.
That was in the last 6 months, I would say.
Mhm.
Marcia Brooks, maybe a year, 2 year ago, as I recall.
Okay.
Leslie Jones has been on there a long time, and I'm not sure about Mr. McAllister.
Okay.
He's relatively new. That's the only person I think out of those 4 that have reapplied, that have been there for quite a while, is Leslie Jones.
Okay.
But I tend to agree with Rick. The meetings I have gone to, which hasn't been that many, but they all seem quite confident and
Okay.
dedicated. And I personally see no reason to not make those reappointments, but I
Okay.
don't know how long.
Okay. Thank you.
Were you
Mr. Mayor?
concerned about term limits?
I was concerned about how long they've been there, because if we keep putting the same people in the same places, it is good to a certain extent, because, yeah, they do know the system, they know what's going on, but what about new and fresh ideas? Like, I don't want to be on city council my entire life. I want somebody younger than me to come on with better ideas than I had 13 years ago. That's my thought process.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Sure.
One thing to add to that, I think, in terms of considering something like that, especially in a situation like that where all 4 members are coming back and wanting to be back on.
Mhm.
Mike, sometimes I'm concerned about attendance
Okay.
and how often they show up to the meetings. And if we've got some, and I don't, you miss 1 or 2, I get that.
Mhm.
But if you got some members that,
It's a cold seat.
habitually just don't show up,
Mhm.
then I think that's a consideration for getting somebody in getting in some fresh blood. So maybe going forward, we may ask the commissions and Ken to kind of track attendance.
Mhm.
I think that would be a great,
Mhm.
condition to have, qualification to look at as we
Okay.
go forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
So are we delaying
I think, no,
We
I
could
don't,
just
I mean,
go
I
ahead
think
and
we
get
just
a-
go with
We
the
can vote,
slate.
yeah.
On the consent agenda,
to reappoint the
to
4
reappoint.
Yeah.
incumbents?
Get
Mhm.
a knock from the council to put those on the
Yeah.
consent agenda.
Yes.
To reappoint.
Yep.
Okay, that ends our work session. Thank you so much for adjourning. We got to go into our regular call meeting, following this work session to approve a couple items on the agenda. Anybody need to take a quick break before we?
Yeah, can we take
Sure.
5 minutes?
Sure.
Just so my legs work.
Give me your email address and I'll forward that. legal.com? Okay, and, okay. Tony@wtp.legal. Okay, I'll forward you. The will, the shall, the will. The letter of English, the English meanings are kind of sometimes different than the legal meanings.
Can and may and will and shall.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start using that language at home. Like, shall.
Will and shall? How that works out.
Definitely ready to plant. Congratulations.
If I can have your attention for just a moment, we're going to call our meeting back to order.
I think you're gonna have to say it again, Mr. Mayor.
Going to call our meeting back to order.
He sent that to you, I don't know if you can see if it came through or not.
We've already gone through our procedures this morning. We've already opened our meeting with our work session this morning. We have a couple of items on our agenda that we need to get approved by the council. A, fire truck as surplus, to get the fire department permission to sell that, and then we'll come back to get a motion from the council to give the fire department the permission to sell that surplus fire truck.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Item B, matters of Fire Station 22 Architect Contract Award, Lorinda Mason, Bush Pennington. They brought that before us this morning, and we can get a motion and a second to approve them to move forward with that.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. It's done. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
At this
Brooks.
time, I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel,
Public comment?
public, public comments, yes.
Hi, I'm Carol Winslow, live at 394 North Main. I've been up here before to talk about safety on the trails. I think we need to consider the cost of patrolling the trails so that citizens are safe on there. I had meant to send you more information. Oh, this is on. Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm the one that struggles to hear anything, so that's why I asked. But I was going to send you information I had started to gather on trail safety, and that particular first example that came up was particularly gory, and I thought, well, I don't want to send that because it seems inflammatory. But in general, we need to be planning for the expense of having a safety component to the trails. They differ from sidewalks for getting your exercise because the sidewalks have eyes on them, and you don't have as much crime happening if people think there are eyes on them. So we really need to start to think about that, and working with those who will be tasked with responding to incidents. I heard a mention of cameras to count at the knee level. I don't know if that's something we need is cameras on the trail. I don't know what we need. I just know that it's important to have that safety component be examined going forward. I think there's 40 miles of trails. Once you look at what's planned for on their documents, that's expensive to keep safe. And it's really important not to just consider the maintenance expense, but also the safety. There'll be equipment needs and certainly more officers. And I think we're still lagging on one of our police positions. It looks like we've filled one, but I think we need to consider raises for our police officers, and we also need to talk to the chief about what does safety on the trail look like.
So have you had a conversation with the Great Space Commission about our trails, about safety?
I haven't talked to them in a while. I attend a lot of meetings, but it's kind of hard for me to get my other work done, so I haven't talked to them lately. I'm more concerned with the safety of the right-of-way plantings that they do there. Is that, again, that's another safety issue. I'm big on safety. I really think that it's important to account for that expense as we grow.
Yeah.
And if I could just say, I don't hear a lot about the growth that is about to start for our city in terms of the massive manufacturing plant. And, you know, when we look at projections for traffic, projections for the school, we're looking at historical, and yet we have this huge, massive event that it looks like they're breaking ground in March for real, and we're going to be impacted by that. And I think we need to have somebody in the city government looking at that, and maybe it's just a specialized group that Mr. Clem could put together, but they could gather information from various places and bring you information so you can make decisions as things start to come before you. So I urge you to kind of think about that. We may not have the money to purchase the studies to tell us what that could look like, but we can look at Pembroke, Georgia, and the Hyundai plant. What's it done to them? What are they facing now? So there is data out there. In other states, there are economic impact studies, and we could look at those for free. And while it wouldn't be, here's exactly what's going to happen in Madison, neither is a study we might buy exactly what might happen in Madison. Economic studies are critically important, but they're not 100% specific like an engineering report might be. So I really hope that y'all will consider doing that. I'd be happy to talk with Mr. Clem if you have time for me, but I just think that's a huge thing that's coming our way, and we need to be ready to react to it in a positive way going forward for our city. I know a lot of people say I'm a no growth person, but I'm not. I've majored in economics, and I think this is living through a case study, so it's fascinating to me. But really hope we'll start to look at that and work with our police chief.
I'm sure our city manager will probably make time for you. Just call his office, and I'm sure he'll make time for you.
Thank you for
Thank you
listening.
so much. Appreciate that. Are there any more public comments? If not, then we could get a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel and real estate. All in favor, show of hands. Opposers, none. Vote unanimously. We will go into regular session to discuss personnel and real estate. At this time, I would ask those not on the council to be excused. It should be.
It's definitely 11 o'clock.
Huh?
I said it's 11 o'clock. This was a long meeting today, Mr. Mayor.
It was gonna be long.
I did too.
But I think we got a short meeting.
On Monday night.
Speaking of pictures and stuff, it's so funny, our official pictures that are on the wall, you know, we got copies of those, so I had it sitting on my desk just to the side. My daughter likes it, she goes, look like an astronaut. So every time I look, well, you know how they always pose with the flag behind them.
Yeah.
So every time I see those now, I feel like the old.
We're astronauts. My granddaughter told me I was too dark and my eyes were too red. Yeah. I said thank you. All I said was thank you. I get comments daily now. They're 9 now, the girls. It's daily.
They always got something to say.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about dyeing my real hair blonde.
I saw
Did
your
you see?
post. Oh my
She
God.
said I was gonna be mixed matched. I would have blonde hair and black eyebrows, and that's like not dressing the correct way. She's in 4th grade, and I just said, okay, thank you, Genesis. Thank you.
Well, in fact, I came in today hoping to see you.
I know.
I'm so disappointed.
I cannot. I don't think I can do it, Betsy. I'm gonna go black girl blonde, but not platinum. It'll probably be maybe a,
4 or 5:30 meeting.
that was my real hair. This is not. So the color you see is my real hair.
Okay, right. But I feel like I saw you, you had some
No?
with like a blonde hair or some blonde, I mean, really, yes.
I don't wear wigs, so
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know.
it could have been a picture that I put up that I made.
I want blonde.
Yeah, right. What about Derek? I probably would do gray.
Then they're trying to get our system cut off.
Okay.
Good idea.
Probably would help a whole lot, Mr. Mayor.
Transparency only goes so far.
Eric, I thought you wanted to be transparent about everything.